Tonight's episode includes interviews from paranormal groups from the U.S. and Canada. I am David. This is Robert, Jasmine, Kory, Ian, and Halloween Mike.
Hey guys.
Hello. Hello, everybody. Happy Halloween. Welcome, friends.
Oh, we were doing a little talking about, who was it? Julia Child?
Awesome alcoholic.
Our favorite cook.
An inspiration for us all.
Best hamburgers.
Hamburgers right there.
A little for me. A little bit more for me.
Was she right though? She didn't slur, man. She just had 6 bottles, man, of that shit. It only calls for like half a teaspoon of a sherry, but she's got like 9 bottles.
And here we are slurring, just talking about her.
She's awesome, man.
Do the English
in the house.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Very nice to be here.
You got any work stories, Mike? No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, no, throwing you under the bus. Throwing you under the bus real quick there. Right off the bat. Well, it's Halloween too, man. Everybody enjoying their Halloween, I hope.
Oh, yeah. Just getting tired of them kids banging on the door.
Got a little ring-a-ding-ding going on in the background.
I might be gunshots. I don't know if they're banging.
There's some banging going on.
Yeah, we just collect our bottle caps when they open the door.
This one says cheers. Here's some candy corn from last year.
But yeah,
I'll still eat it.
30th.
30th, no, 40th.
40th episode.
Hey.
You're on 30. You're on number 30, Sherry.
What the fuck, man? What am I doing? Yeah, that's right. That guy darn Ian's drunk too, man.
Drink off of this tea.
Spilling his tea.
Yeah, actually, man, we got a good lineup. We got different paranormal teams. We got authors. We have ghost tour guides. A lot of good stories from these fellas. I don't want to get nothing away, but like New York, that's a couple of good stories. I know we mentioned Midnight Paranormal Society here from San Antonio. Our own Ben Longoria.
Talking about the book signing?
That's a book signing, yes. Ursula Bielski, I believe that's how you pronounce it. She's probably going to tear me a new one. That's what I told you about 20 times. It's not that.
Hey, I love that name. That's a good name.
She's an investigator also. She's also came out in a paranormal survivor. She's also an author. Damn. Woo!
It's early, Rob.
I've been looking since too.
Beer number 30.
Yeah.
There you go. That's where the
But yeah, Canada, those folks were real sweet, man. They were cool and awesome. I kept thinking I was talking to the guy from Gettysburg, which he told us an awesome story. Can't go wrong with Gettysburg, man. He actually gave us a photo also, and it's pretty awesome. And the story that he's telling goes with the photo. It's awesome.
Check it out on the website.
Speaking of Ursula, no one is ever going to best that costume, Rob.
Yeah.
We showed somebody the other day and they're like, oh my god.
Oh, so you got a picture of it? Can we put it on the website?
Yeah,
There you go.
There you go. Yeah, I'll be honored to put that up there. That's awesome, man, because
Best Ursula ever.
It's on the website, guys. Check it out.
Yeah, it's
seriously,
crazy.
man. I told the guys, like, because this year, like I said, I wanted to be the Pink Ranger. It's just like it doesn't, because
A morph suit.
I'm doing it on purpose because I'm a fat
So you're gonna
guy.
wear a morph suit? A tight,
I really want
like
to, man.
skin tight?
I'm not that tight, man. I don't want people to be, to see the.
He's a Gentile.
I wanted to dress as the Pink Ranger, but that didn't happen because I couldn't find my size. Because they made for lady, even for the big lady costumes. They didn't have my size stuff. It's like, we got size 56, but I think they're more like a 64.
You should have done the Ursula again, man. The only person to get a hit.
That lies off the chain.
And I told the fellas at work, and they're all fellas, right? They put in their time. They've been there 30 years. They just could not understand that. Say again.
Now you're the weirdo.
Dude, you should come out for a live action movie.
Well, the only
talking about
only lady.
They're telling you to grow up.
But that's what kids are.
I think I walk around and I heard
I'm not dead. I want to live. Like I pissed off. I'm like, yeah.
Rob, you should have tried out for the live action movie. You would have been perfect.
She would have gave you a run for your money. What's her name from Project Repo? Was it Repo or?
Oh God, that's
She would have gave you a run.
Sonia.
I always want to do that. I was going to shave my eyebrows, bend everything off, and just put those high check marks in there. Roll her up. Yeah. Dude, have you seen her?
Yeah.
Like
Nasty.
Yeah. Poor lady. Boy had he had his work cut out for him some nights there.
The real toys back at home.
Oh, dude, we're gonna get somebody to put that.
No.
It's gonna be her.
Oh, you're risky. She was a man. I'll just take my $1 back.
Black lipstick right there. But yeah, actually, all these ones that we got, they were really good. The last one was really good, man. The guy that told us the Gettysburg one, you can't go wrong with it. I don't know how to say that. But really, you can't, man. Yeah, Gettysburg, everything down there is awesome, man. And there's so much paranormal sightings, especially in the battlefield. What was it? Something like 53,000 that were dead.
That was crazy.
It's like something crazy. It's like saturated with blood the whole ground. When he said that, what he talks about, I'm gonna just give this one tidbit away. It's like there was so much blood in some of those places that they were doing the surgeries. They were like on the top floor. It's one of the houses that were out there that they were doing surgery on all these people, and there was so much blood on the floor that they had to drill a hole. So it's not one hole, several holes, just to drain the blood into the basement. Jeez, I was like, wow. I was like, that's a the stuff that we call for y'all. I mean, it's crazy, right? I mean, that's pretty cool. I heard and I was like, that's disgusting, but dude, that's so fucking awesome, man. I want to hear the rest of this. And I will too, man. And I know I've been drinking too much because I dropped the F1 at the same time to me, and I will stop. That'll be my last one. Or I'll say freaking from now on. Flipping. But you know what? Want to go into the first one?
Let's do this.
My name is Mike Cardenas, and I am the founder and lead investigator for Midnight Paranormal Society, located here in San Antonio, Texas. I got into the paranormal field due to some experiences that happened to myself and to my mom and some of my siblings growing up. And my experiences, they first started actually back in 1988. I want to say it started between 1988 and 89. So I was about maybe 3 or 4 years old when I first started. And I have a really good memory, and I remember very vividly all the experiences I had growing up. So our first experience we had, we were living near the Marbach and Military Drive area. We were living in this apartment complex, and at the time it was my mom and I. There was a moment where the police showed up to the apartment in the middle of the night, and they were knocking the door, we hear them trying to kick the door down, and my mom ran down the stairs, and there was an ups and downs to the apartment. The bedrooms are upstairs, and the living room was, of course, downstairs. We go down to the bottom of the steps, and my mom opens the door, and the cops try to, rush their way into our apartment, saying there was a call, apparently from our apartment, in the middle of the night, saying that there was a couple being held hostage, and that the callers were screaming and yelling for help, and for the police to show up and help them. And of course, that wasn't the case because it was just my mom and I. So that was one of our first experiences that occurred. Then what ended up happening was, that was the one incident. Then my mom's friend's son came over one day because it was his birthday, and they brought the Ouija board over. My mom had no idea they had brought the Ouija board over. She was cooking food for the birthday party. And me being a small kid, I had no idea what was going on. I was oblivious to what was going on. The guy, he took out the Ouija board, they were playing it. My mom came from the kitchen, saw what they were playing, and he pretty much my mom pretty much said, you know what, all of you guys out of my apartment. I was trying to do a good deed by making you guys a little party for your birthday. I need to go. So she pretty much kicked everybody out. She was kicking everybody out. And right at that moment, I had to use the restroom. I started walking upstairs to the second floor of our apartment. And mind you, at the bottom of the steps, there's a light switch. But on the stairway, there's a light bulb there. And I flick the switch on, and the light turns on. Well, then as I'm walking, there's like a landing between the middle of the steps leading up to the top floor. When I get to the top, that middle landing, the light cuts off. And I look at the light bulb, and it's dark in the hallway. It's nighttime. So I walk up the stairs, and my room is to my left side, my mom's room is to my right side, and the restroom is directly in front of me in the hallway. So as I'm taking the steps to go to the very top of the steps, I look left to my room. We had this very old school, it's like a steel, like a metal desk that's connected to a chair. And I was always a heavy set kid, so I never could use a chair and sit in it because I just couldn't fit in it. So I look to my left into my room, and I see this full-grown man sitting in the desk, and the only thing I could think of was, why can't he fit in the desk and not me? So I go to the restroom. When I walk out of the restroom, now my room's on my right side. The man turns around, he looks at me, we make eye contact, then he turns away, looks back out the window, and he has this look of sadness on his face. So I walk downstairs, and my mom, the last person walking out of the apartment, and I said, Mom, hold on, there's your friend upstairs. Tell him to leave. She's like, friend? What friend? So she goes upstairs, and when we get to that middle landing, before we get to the top of the stairs, the light they had me shut off that whole time because it just turned off. It just, by itself, without any warning, it turns right back on. And we both look up at the light bulb, it's on. We go to the top of the stairs, and the man's gone. So that was kind of our first experiences with the paranormal. And fast forward to about 2000, 2001, I want to say. We had moved to a neighborhood here in San Antonio called Indian Creek. You know, at the time, it was a very, very rough area, part of San Antonio, the south side. And, we moved into the neighborhood. And, of course, really quickly, we got to know all the neighborhood kids. And one of the neighborhood kids who lived across the street from us, he came up to me and said, hey, how are you able to live in the house where a kid died? And at that point, we had lived in several houses where people told the same thing. Oh, you live in a scary house in the block. They live in the house where this man hung himself, where this person killed himself. It was always something like that. And so at that point, I was just, it was already expected to hear that. So I didn't pay no attention to it. I just went on home myself. And I remember the one thing that stood out to me was that guy told me that the boy who died at the house we were renting, he actually lived across the street where the current guy lived. And apparently this boy, before the guy moved in there, the boy was playing with the water heater. And something happened to the water heater where it exploded. And apparently it exploded so strongly that the boy basically blew up. Or something happened to where his limbs got ripped off. And so the majority of his body flew with that much force to our house. So again, when this kid in the neighborhood was telling me this, I didn't know really what to think. I was like, you know what, it's probably just trying to scare me. So there was one evening, my brother, he had the habit that he would sneak up on you, and he would pretty much the jump scare. He would come from behind and scare you. So there was a point where I'm laying on my bed, and from the corner of my eye, I can see my door open slowly. And I see my brother from the corner of my peripheral. I see my brother kind of squat down, and I see him kind of crawl on the floor very slowly coming towards me. And when I notice him doing that, in my mind, I'm like, okay, he's trying to do the jump scare and scare me. I'm going to trick him, and I'm going to scare him first. So I see him getting closer and closer and closer to my bed. I see him slowly start getting up. Well, right at that moment where his head is almost toward my head, that I yelled at the top of my lungs, to scare him. And when I look at my brother, who I thought was my brother, it was another boy, a boy I have never seen before. And this boy got so scared, he yelled, but no words came out. And when he kind of like jumped back, he was so terrified. The one thing that stood out to me the most, and it terrified me, I ran out of my room, was when I looked down, the boy had no feet. Imagine seeing just from the ankle down, and there's no foot there. That really scared me, to my core. So the boy turns from me, runs right to the wall, and it's like if he was never there. That scared me, that shook me so hard, I ran out of the room, I lost my breath, and I'm trying to scream for my mom. She's trying to calm me down, and I'm panicking, and I told her, hey, I explained to her what I saw, and that just really terrified me. So thank you for listening, and I hope to hear from you all soon. I want to wish a happy Halloween to RMP crew. Hope you all have a wonderful Halloween and a safe evening.
If you would like the Midnight Paranormal Society to come out and investigate your resident or your place of business, you can contact them at their email address, paranormalmps@gmail.com, or you can look them up on their Facebook page at facebook.com/paranormalmps. They're a local team here in San Antonio, and they do not charge. Everything is free of charge. You can contact the founder and lead investigator, Mike Cardenas. He's also the creator of the Paranormal Partnership of Texas, which is a chance for Texas paranormal investigative teams to get together and share ideas and techniques. You can contact them also on Facebook.
Yeah. You tell me that the next people who come for the trick or treat, I feel like opening the naked this week.
Oh, Rob, please no.
Not again.
I still have nightmares from last time.
You've had too many cosmic sours.
Yo,
I gotta show 'em.
I got a single candy corn for you.
Rob, like I have a new bed, right? I woke up in a cold sweat I'm still not getting good sleep. Come on.
Wait, what happened?
They're gonna
I'm confused.
Get butt naked in front of you.
they're gonna put a sign in our yard. I don't want
Beware
that.
Beware of trick.
And no treat fucking around like that. No, man, they made me register.
They do that, right? Registered sex offender.
I think sometimes, yeah.
Yeah.
I imagine.
They could have a sign outside the
During
front
Halloween,
yard.
especially, right?
I'm a registered sex offender. And having
Yep,
it in your
yeah.
front yard, man, good God.
It tripped me out when my mom showed me the packet when I was younger. Like, this is all the registered sex offenders in the area.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, dude, there
Like
was so many.
chickenpox.
The packet was like.
Yeah.
I was like, what the hell?
The neighborhood?
Some dude.
Corey
that
was like,
playing
I
football
played
like,
there with that guy before.
Yeah.
I'm like, what did
I was
you
like, no wonder
play?
he was so nice. He looked like, dude, he looked like Peyton Manning. I swear. And we were playing football with him. I was like, okay, this is cool. And he just.
How come he wants to play touch?
Yeah.
No, but
he likes that.
your buddies and then you
I tackle.
well, you kind of bring it up to me, hey, bro. Something weird, man. You came up on the sex offender, bro. I looked up by area code and your house was there. Is that you or something? And then they always come out with that. Okay, dude. If you're my friend, you'll understand.
He had his picture, man.
Yeah,
He wasn't my friend. I just.
And,
The internet's crazy.
Yeah, hey, I didn't know it was illegal. You can't sit on a ball butt naked on your driveway. I mean, it's your driveway.
Dude, this guy at
I
work,
think they
man.
didn't come by because I just had candy corns. I don't understand. I think that's what it was.
At my last
Just
job.
a joke. I'm like, okay.
I can't say where I worked or who it was, but he left like, and 2 months after he left.
That you want to reel him in.
Remember, he had kids. He was like 25. He had kids, and guys were sending all these things. He got caught. You remember the what was it on Dateline or no?
Chris Hansen.
He got caught in one of those.
Yeah.
And that thing went around work real quick. They're like, dude, this guy just got, because he met up with like 2 little 15-year-old boys.
Oh!
And he had kids, man.
Was it with Chris? Man, that dude.
No, I don't know if it was Chris. He was already gone.
Have a seat. No, take a seat.
I like watching
Have a
that,
seat.
man.
Yeah.
He was so cool and calm about it. He was like, why don't you come in? No, the dude would show up butt naked. No, just come sit down.
Did you see the guy that showed up with tube socks only?
All he can say is, I'm sorry.
How you cool? You're walking from your car. Drive your car
Jesus. And then when they get pinched, it's always the same thing. They want to take their hand like, please, just please.
Yeah,
please.
and they know they're gonna get it.
Yeah.
Please let me go this
When
time.
I leave, I'm not gonna be arrested.
Yeah, you can walk out free. Go ahead. You can walk out. Get down. They're like, oh.
Well, you had that trip like you're like in the supermarket. You're not even doing shit wrong. You got your head down, you're putting your shit in the basket, and then all of a sudden Chris Hansen comes around the fucking you shit in your pants, right?
I can find out.
Yeah, I know my wife don't like me eating this cookie. It's like, what are you doing? Because that dude can stop a motherfucker in his tracks, man.
Or,
Like, you don't do shit wrong, but it's just like fucking Chris Hansen, man. He's scared of shit. Worse than cops, worse than It's like, I know I didn't do nothing wrong, but man, it's Chris Hansen.
Let's interview that guy.
He probably gets that all the time, right?
Yeah.
Oh shit, it's Chris Hansen. But some of them dumb motherfuckers, man, they ass word, man. I mean, like you said, that one guy, this dude struggled. Yeah, I know y'all saw it. He got butt naked.
he only had socks.
Yeah, but they always have like rope. Yeah, and like a ski mask, and do you really need a whole bucket of lube?
I wasn't planning on doing nothing. They wanted pizza, so I brought him pizza. Yeah, okay, we got the messages.
Did you see the earlier ones? The earlier ones, before they started like arresting the people, they let the guy go, and then like I think they said it was like 72 hours. They found him doing it again at a McDonald's.
Same guy got busted.
Yeah, twice at a McDonald's.
I'm going down, man. I'm like,
And I still didn't understand.
No, yeah.
I'm like, well, I'm just here to, buy Big Macs, and they're like, no, come on, man, we know what you're doing.
Buy Big Macs.
Like, oh, yeah, why are you waiting? You were there when they told you to wait here. Wasn't it? I thought it was by a beach or something like that. The guy was wearing like a little yellow. It wasn't a thong, but it was like, what were you watching?
There was multiple ones when they were like, oh yeah, I know this is, I've been on it before. Like, well, this has happened before. Like, what are you coming? Come on, you didn't learn, motherfucker. Like,
how did you get back like that?
Yeah.
Man? And then, but yeah, that guy, I don't know, man.
what's bad when you're in the house and he walks out and just his face and you're looking at him like, oh shit, yeah. If I had a handgun right now, I'd put it in my mouth.
Yeah, that's true too. Hey, I'm just here to paint. They told me to come at this time,
And they told me don't wear pants.
I don't want to get him dirty.
my pants. They're Versace. That's weeks. But like, that dude, right? I mean, he'd stop fucking train, man. Like, I mean, I bet he gets that a lot, man. We just laughs, right? And that's what he says probably when he turns the corner.
oh yeah.
Check this out.
Yeah, like look, I'm gonna do this move. What are you doing? You're Chris Hansen. My wife's over there. I promise. I'm the.
She's 48, man.
She's 48. This is consensual. I'm married. Look at the ring. He's not laughing his ass off. Nah, I'm just kidding. You're a character guy. You're like, you son of a bitch.
Hey, this is Joseph Krueger joining you guys today, and I represent New York City Ghost Tours, and I have some great stories to tell you guys today about our team, about some of their creepiest locations that they visited, some of their favorite locations, and most importantly, the most haunted locations where we actually had eyewitness accounts, sightings, and some really strange paranormal activity going on that we've been able to eyewitness ourselves along with our guests. So just to get you guys started, members of our team for New York City, our best tour guides are Hannah, Marcy, Damien, Matt, and Tony. And Damien is one of our most experienced guides, and he's seen a lot of stuff in his time. And when he's in New York City going on the ghost tours, he actually has a lot of people who give him feedback on the ghost tours of things that they see on the ghost tours, pictures that they email him, videos even, and of course the stories of when he's actually there with the guests along with us, hunting around, going to these historical locations and trying to find out, what's actually going on there, what's real and what's not. So the way it works is we actually, take these, we take our team and these guests to these haunted locations, and before we go, we do a huge amount of research to check out these locations to make sure, one, they're actual locations where, they have history of something tragic happening or something crazy happening that actually might create these ghosts and create these sightings. And after we do this research, we try to find, eyewitness accounts, obscure historical data to back up this story behind each location. So by the time we get there, we really know what we're dealing with. And so it depends on which route we're taking, but we usually do about 8 to 12 different locations on different nights, and of course it's always after dark. It's getting late and it gets really creepy, especially in New York City and Greenwich Village. And Damien, one of our most experienced tour guide, tells me that the creepiest place that he's actually been to on our New York City ghost tours is the Mark Twain house. And the reason for him specifically, it's actually personal, is before we started even investigating this house, he actually lived down the street from the Mark Twain house and was actually present just a few blocks away when in that Mark Twain house, Joel Steinberg actually beat his 6-year-old girl to death in the Mark Twain house. And after that, we started getting all these tales, all these ghost stories, and we did this investigating up to 22 entities that actually might live in that house. So Damien was actually kind of able to experience that in the present with something that actually happened there, and that something actually brought out not just the old ghosts and stories from the past, but also some ghosts and stories and entities from the present. Now, two of our favorite locations that we like to visit are the Edgar Allan Poe house, where he actually wrote some of the Raven, and everybody knows Edgar Allan Poe and his history and his poetry and his writing. He was really morbid and dark, and they love going to the Edgar Allan Poe house, because of that reason, but also, because of the stories behind Edgar Allan Poe, and, he would visit there from Baltimore, and the way he met his untimely demise actually in Baltimore. Now, the second favorite location is the firehouse. It's a haunted firehouse, and it actually used to be a brothel, and people are just fascinated. This location has changed so many different times, but people like the history that goes there, along with all the ghost sightings that happen at the firehouse, the brothel. They have ghosts, from history, from when it was a brothel house, and even now when it's an actual firehouse in New York City. Now, the most haunted site that everybody can agree on, that we have seen countless sightings, we have countless stories, countless eyewitness accounts, and that is really not just the most creepy, the most haunting, but also the most terrifying, is the triangle, called the Triangle Shirt Waste Factory. And just a little history, it was actually is used now by New York University as the Brown Building. But 100 years ago, it was known as the Ash Building, and it was known for its, quote, fireproof room, which attracted a bunch of garment makers and became infamous after that because it was actually the deadliest industrial disaster in the history of New York City when it actually burned down. So it was actually housed on the 8th, 9th, and 10th floors, and the fire started, and they actually had a bunch of people trapped on those floors who couldn't get out because they would actually want to check their purses, the women's purses, to see if they were stealing anything. And so when the fire started, they couldn't get out of the fire escapes, and they couldn't go down the stairs, they couldn't go down the elevator just because the elevator stopped working because of the intense heat, and even the men on the 8th floor tried to warn them so they can get out. Finally, they just ended up going up either to the roof or having to jump out the buildings, and some of them survived getting caught in the fire net, but after a few, the fire nets actually broke, and so most of the people who actually jumped out died. And I remember, I think the recorder of the scene, William Shepard, said, I learned a new sound that day, a sound more horrible than description can picture, the thud of a speeding living body on a stone sidewalk. Now, there was a lot of spectators during the fire, but today the sightings that people see are actually pretty incredible. The people on the inside of the building, when we get on the inside, it's always on the 8th, 9th, or 10th floors where most of the people died because the firemen's ladders couldn't get above the 7th floors. And what they'll see is elevators going up and down by themselves, which doesn't sound too creepy, but they'll start to smell fire and smoke, and then the smell of burning fire only on those floors. Personal items will get moved. They'll see people walking through the hallways that are look like they're charred and then completely disappear. But the most haunting things that they see are almost reminiscent of 9/11, when they're seeing actually people jumping through windows to the 8th and 10th floor. Now, they never actually see, and we would never actually see anyone hit the ground, but it's literally, you're looking up at the building and you're either walking around it or you're walking in front of it, and all of a sudden, either out the window or even part of the way down, you'll see a body all of a sudden appear and start falling and then disappear before it hits the ground. And as you're watching this happen, another body will appear and actually start to fall and disappear before it hits the ground. It differs from person to person. So, for example, sometimes people will see, like multiple people will see the same person in the same place. Like the same residual image, a man or a woman jumping out. But sometimes people report, like one person will report 2 people jumping or falling to the sky holding hands, which actually happens at that location. And they don't even know that it happened at that location, but they see it before we can even give them that background. And then another person will say, actually someone else is jumping off the roof, and they're in a different position and they fall only halfway and then they disappear. So it's actually multiple eyewitness accounts and multiple sightings of this. I mean, it's creepy. It's not something that gives you a great feeling seeing this, but it's a kind of a new, and it's really unnerving to the people who have seen it and to us that have seen it, because one, it's a traumatic experience just remembering the history of it, but number 2, being able to eyewitness that and almost not believing your own eyes as it's happening. And with the history of New York and 9/11 in general, it's just unbelievable, the feeling that it gives you, the horrible feeling that it gives you when you actually see this happening before your very eyes. And then you still smell the smoke and even sometimes hear the fire, and once in a while people will hear screams that sound like someone falling from a great height, even if they don't see anything. So those are the creepiest location at the Mark Twain House, the favorites of the guests and the ghost tour guides, the Allen Poe House and the Firehouse, which used to be the brothel, but the Triangle Shirt Waste Factory and the sightings that go on there. I remember one guest that we had, we were actually inside the building. There's a mirror by the elevator, and they looked in the reflection of the mirror, and they would actually see someone in the reflection of the mirror behind them, who would look like a charred body or just a person standing behind them, and they turn around, there was no one there, and it's only on the 8th, 9th, and 10th floors. So we actually get a lot of feedback, not just from our guests and our tour guides and our team from that location, but from New York University students, from people who live there, residents, from other guests that visit there. But the eyewitness accounts are really the most terrifying to actually capture those and try to even get them on camera or even on video when that stuff actually happens. So, and then we have some of these guides, some of our team that actually go back to their house after we're hunting, and they still continue to experience paranormal activity even at their own house. So reminiscent of what we see actually at the locations that we investigate and that we visit. So for example, Damien said after one of the tours, he was at his house making a sandwich in his mother's kitchen, and his mother is completely skeptical, doesn't believe in any of the ghosts or paranormal stuff, and he actually said that he's making a sandwich, and all of a sudden he feels the sense of someone staring at him, and his mother looks up and says the same thing. I feel like someone's staring at me, and they look in one of the mirrors, the reflections that's in the house, and it's almost identical to what they experience, what people experience in the in the 8th floor by the elevator in the Triangle Shirt Waste Factory that's now used by New York University. So I'm really excited and privileged to be a part of the Ghost Tour team in New York City, and I hope that we continue to investigate and research these locations and go back and find more things than we found in the past. So it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun every night that we do it, and we would love to continue to expand that and to investigate more and, see what New York City has to offer as far as, not just history, but the actual tragic stories and circumstances and the emotions of why these people died and why they become ghosts and why they haunt these locations. Happy Halloween, RFP crew.
A special thanks to Joseph Krueger, who runs the NYC Ghost Tours. If you'd like to be part of the NY City Ghost Tours, you can find more info on their website, nycghosts.com. They have nightly tours at 8 p.m. They also have a Facebook page. It's NYC Ghost. They have photos and eyewitness accounts on their Facebook page. And all around, it seems like an awesome tour, so y'all should check them out. Again, thanks to you, Joseph Krueger, and your team. Thank you.
So next week's episode is going to be about our
Paranormal Fest.
Paranormal Fest, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's going to be cool.
Got some advertising there. Got
Still fresh in our mind.
David, man, creative ways to
You
get
did.
the,
I didn't say what you were doing, but you did it right,
I
man.
was thinking a little bit.
I knew right away.
You know what? I caught it right away too. After a while, like Dave should turn around. Oh, he is doing.
He already is.
Yeah, they were filming.
Just to let y'all know what we're talking about.
From Chris Maru's.
Chris Maru, that's an old anchor from San Antonio. News anchor.
Chris Moon. I apologize, Chris, man. did you see his young picture? The one that he has out on. Well,
Yeah, the one he had on his website.
Yeah, maybe it's not his young picture. It's probably that's a sexy beast there, boy.
Very, very handsome.
Man, they're like unbelievable.
Hair galore.
Hell yeah, man.
I had hair like that.
Long and just all silky and stuff, boy.
It was weird when he was there. I saw him turn around one time. Man, his hair was moving in slow motion.
Wasn't it?
It's like
Great too, right? I picked it up from the little
Like a Pantene commercial.
I think he was doing it on purpose just to get us like your hair smells dirty.
Because I am worth it.
So there was a guy named Chris Moon in the booth next to us at the Paranormal Fest, and that guy, apparently he's somebody, big. He's come out.
Apparently. Apparently.
A little shady. Apparently.
I didn't mean it like
Almost
that.
as big as us.
I didn't mean it like that, Chris. I'm sorry.
He was cool. He was good.
He was a nice guy, though. Yeah, he was a nice guy.
Yeah.
Sorry, man.
Been on true team. Well, not only that, they were on.
Yeah, well, they were
interviewing
our
I don't remember who it was.
one of the Spanish stations.
Yeah.
They were interviewing them.
No, maybe? I don't know.
But so that's what they were talking about was when they were interviewing them, I noticed the camera, when they were doing their interview, the camera was pointed right towards our booth. And so I got this bright idea where I'm going to stand right in front of the camera with my back, which has our logo and our big, our name and website and every number, everything pointed right towards the camera. So anyway.
Wouldn't that be shitty if they blurred it out?
This movie like, no, blur these.
Disclaimer: do not call these guys.
I use Garnier Fructis.
David, you know my underwear that I have with the paranormal ones, man. That's a billboard right there.
They don't get the word out.
I had everything paranormal that day. Our Rigor Mortis. Yeah, even the joints, man. I had the joint. I was like, Dave, I'm not going to join Dave. I was going to bend over and just have the billboard joint. But all they had was the O from the Rigor Mortis. It's just perfectly placed, right? Well, you know where it's placed, right? By the O-ring.
Hey, what did Jasmine say? Dad, I'll make your shirt, but I won't make your chonies. I'm sorry.
I got those especially Versace. I came with the Versace. It was awesome. We had the UFO people that were there. Well, we have like 2 or 3 paranormal investigators. I didn't know we had that many here. I obviously.
There was a few.
Was it one from El Paso or something?
Seguin.
No, Seguin. That's what I was thinking of. I'm bad with names.
Seguin and here, and then there was another one. I know there was. I just didn't see. And then they had MUFON, which is the big boys on the block with they're nationwide. I guess that's their San Antonio base one. And then they had everything there, man, and it was awesome. I mean, we're happy to be part of it, and all the stories that we got. It wasn't as busy as last year's. Remember? Yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah.
It was bad.
Free.
Last year's was free and the beer was cheap. So
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, the beer was cheap this time.
Man.
Thank you, Jazz. 10 beers, please.
Is someone gonna help me carry those?
Let me
Or
ask you a question.
our booth's right here.
And like, how much was that 12 pack? I was like, fucking, they're free.
Let me get 10. Let me get 10 12 packs.
It was awesome, man.
It was kind of shitty because she was like, we're running out. I'm like, I'll get 10 then.
I was like, you got a problem.
Right?
I was gonna
I'll
have
make with the 10 beers. You knew we were coming.
This is on.
There's a truck here. Half of it. He knew already he was going to be here. Like, I think they only like Lone Star, but like, hell no.
We like alcohol. You got beer.
Bring it. But you know what, though, man? It was awesome having it there. One thing that kept tripping me out is seriously, Dave, I was really afraid to bring something back home, man. And I know we talked about this, like, mom, the way she was,
Yeah,
like, you
she
know, you don't
kinda
want to
put it
drag
in her
nothing
head.
back, yeah. Because it's true. Yeah, it is true. Yeah, you know, and like, I know there was a lady.
But yeah, you weren't willing to pay for that cleanser.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
post at home, I'll clean my own self. No, but you know what? And I'm not getting cleansers too because
They charge extra for. No.
well, I think there were some folks that were just like,
No, I don't know what I'm saying. No,
that was so I know the sage and stuff, but
They spray you with a fucking garden hose.
that's what I did.
What is that guy?
Brushes and power wash.
Didn't we do a story with the guy where he was sweeping the lady?
No, I talked about that.
Oh
My friend that this lady went to a culindera. Those are the witch doctors from the flea market. And they were asking her, well, how did you know? And she didn't really want to cough it out. But then finally she said, well, he made me get butt naked and he swept my body. He swept me with a broom. You could have got that done anywhere, man. Hell, I would have done it.
A fucking straw broom and shit. I'll scratch my feet.
Her back is all scratched up.
They had to get in deep with the potholes. Let me have the vacuum.
give me the shot back.
Oh, did she?
Now you're Olympia.
Yeah, I said,
Oh, that's gross.
don't have to worry about what else. What do you call it? Fatima's the ghost? Not Fatima's the ghost. I'm not even going to try that. I've been drinking, man. But, this is why nobody wants to use a story. I have a real good story for those guys, but they involve rape, and I heard it's not cool. And it's a funny story.
Oh man.
Yeah, we do try to be funny, but it's like we said that this is the way we handle things, man. And, we don't mean anything by it, but damn, man, I mean, just some of the things that we run across, so sometimes it's just our way of dealing with how freaky and scary it is, man. I don't know about y'all, but I mean, it's like when you get real scared, you just don't know what to do next.
Yeah,
You
laugh.
Just laugh.
It's easier to laugh sometimes. To laugh about it.
You know, and
Cry. I don't want to cry like a little bitch.
all these people that listen to us, and it's like Jazz said, that all these people, they know what they're getting into, and we really shouldn't say that because they really kind of. We know when to laugh, when not to, but I mean, most of you fellas, man, we have a field day with y'all because, man, we love y'all, man. I mean, it's just we have so much fun doing this podcast, but we will take your story serious. And all these people that gave us this, man, I mean, it's spiritual, man, because every time we go to these paranormal fests, it's like we're the little booth towards the end. What's that over there?
Yeah.
But man, every time they go to us, somebody's got always a story to tell us, man. And that's the thing too, that we listen to them. We should stop laughing, but we listen to them all the time. We do take your story serious, and that's
We always have weirdos, right?
Yeah, the weirdos is the best part, though, man.
That's so great.
Honestly, that's what makes us kind of above is because we listen to everybody.
That's right.
And if you are like that weird person that, you know, like people just would just like, you know, if you were the guy or the girl who sat alone during lunch, that's us. Yeah, that's what we want to hear. Yeah, like,
No, hey,
weird. She's
now if you're an accomplice to a murder, don't tell us your story. We don't want
No,
to be
yes,
an
tell us
accomplice
our
on-
story.
Tell us.
Don't give us too many details.
Tell us,
About the
but
statute of limitations.
yeah, once it got over, if it's from the 40s, that's fine. Then when we had 2 already.
Yeah, we've had 2 murder stories that are just crazy. Man.
But you know what? They were really good. So I mean,
they're always good.
up in the air about like, send us your murder stories. But yeah, you know what?
Bleach doesn't work.
Yeah.
What the fuck is that? Is that title on the email?
But seriously though, man, I mean, I like those ones, especially the bodies under the. It was kind of messed up, but I didn't say that.
Yeah, I know.
Good job.
That's some bullshit though, man.
F word, man. Bullshit. Damn F word.
It is Halloween.
Shit.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh my God.
Those little kids knock at the door, they like, yeah.
We're being ignoring.
Don't knock on that door. I heard you come about 30 times a day.
Here's your fucking pecans and apples.
That kids, y'all like fucking candy corn?
This pervert's talking about fucking.
Thank you for continuing the sentence,
I mean,
Rob.
like right now, seriously, like what is it? Most big companies that they're like, well, Halloween's around the corner, you know, candy corns about like there you
Rocks,
go.
rocks.
Like yeah, but I'm sure there's a ton of people like. And have you ever seen the ones that they just bite the tip?
I only like yellow.
Yeah.
I only like yellow.
Or the bottom part, like, but nobody eats the middle. They're like,
That's where the corn flavor is.
that's it. That's all wax.
Speaking of candy corn, we had a whole tray of it and it's gone.
It's gone. I love my candy corn.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I'm over there knocking it.
Yeah, Rob, we ate it.
You still got a little bit in your
Not the
beard.
top, not the bottom,
Not
not
just the popcorn, but one guy caught in there. That's a popcorn. Ian, take these
Hey, this is Ursula Bielski from Chicago. I'm the author of many books about Chicago's ghosts and hauntings and the owner of Chicago Hauntings Tours. And I'm here tonight to talk to you a little bit about how I got started in Chicago from my grandma's house on the north side of Chicago. When I was growing up in Chicago, I got my start listening to my grandmother at my grandma's house at 2122 North Cuyler Street on the north side of Chicago, telling me about when she grew up in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. And I am quite sure that the stories that she told me influenced me into starting my career as a paranormal investigator, because I would sit around at the foot of her wheelchair and listen to her as she told me the stories of growing up in this little town in Wisconsin. She actually had been born in Chicago in the late 19th century, but they had gone up to live in Fond du Lac because they needed money, and they went up to live with family members because my great-grandmother had gotten a job ironing the linens for the seminary in Fond du Lac. And they lived with my great-great-uncle's family. And the family home was right next to the cemetery, the seminary cemetery. And my grandmother would tell me stories that she was woken up not once but twice by the sound of the grave bells that they would have on the graves at that time when people were not embalmed. And they would have bells on the graves in case someone was buried alive. And they would have the bells rigged up with wires so that if you were buried alive, you could ring the bell so that the gravedigger could come and dig you up quickly and dig you up and bring you back up. And my grandma told me that twice when she was lying in her little bed up in Fond du Lac as a little girl, that she heard that she was woken up by these grave bells ringing in the cemetery next to the house. She told me also that when her aunt passed away around 1900, they went to the wake. This was also up in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. And they were at the wake in the parlor, of course, when the bodies were waked in the family home. And her aunt sat up in the casket in the parlor and jumped out of the casket, took a poker from that fireplace poker from next to the fireplace, and attacked her husband for almost burying her alive. Because at that time, of course, when people weren't embalmed, it was so common to almost bury people alive. So these are the stories that I was hearing when I was growing up in Chicago, and it's not surprising that I was so interested and horrified, and became a ghost hunter. And my dad was also, he was also a Chicago police officer, and often told me to take me around on his rounds with him. And we would often go down to the Maxwell Street police station, and he would put me up on the watch commander's desk at Maxwell Street, which was right around the corner from Hull House, Jane Addams' Hull House, where the Devil Baby was brought in 1913. And I would hear stories of all the crying and screaming from the old lockup in the Maxwell Street dungeon down at the Maxwell Street police station, which everybody sees now on Chicago PD. Everybody watches Chicago PD. That's the Maxwell Street police station. I used to go there when I was a kid. It's very haunted, extremely haunted still today. But my grandmother's ghost stories so influenced me when I was a kid to pursue my career. And when I was a child, I spent so much time there because my own house was just a block away. When my mom got married, she and my dad bought a house just a block away. So when I was a child, my cousins and I spent a lot of time at my grandmother's house, including spending the night there a lot in the summertime. And oftentimes this summertime, all of my cousins and I, like 15 of us, would sleep on the floor at night in the summertime together for weeks at a time. And oftentimes we would be woken up at night by the sound of a baby crying from the front bedroom. And we didn't know it at the time because no one told us when we were little kids. But later on, when we got older, we were told that in 1920, my mother's little or older sister, my maternal grandmother's first child, Frances, had passed away from pneumonia when she was only 2 weeks old. And she had cried and cried and cried and cried for almost 2 weeks before she died. So in 1974, when I was staying overnight there with my cousins, like 100 years later, we could still hear the sound of that baby crying in that room. In 1980, my Uncle Joe passed away in that same house. He was a great nature lover and an artist. And he always slept up in the attic of the house. It was like a Victorian 2-flat. So my grandma and grandpa always lived in the upstairs with their 6 kids, and relatives always lived downstairs on the ground floor. And then their boys went up and lived in the attic when they got older. My Uncle Joe was an artist, and he never got married, so he always lived up in the attic, and he painted beautiful murals on the walls in the attic, and he never moved out. And he had a heart attack and died around 1980. I'm sorry, around 1990. And that night that he died, my godmother, my Aunt Franny, and her husband were still living in the house in the flat below. This is long after my grandmother had passed away. And they heard him go up the stairs to the attic to bed, where he always slept. Years later, after no one lived in the flat, he still would sleep in the attic where his brothers and he had slept for so many years. And he never came down the next day. They would always hear him come down to breakfast the next day, but they didn't hear him come down to breakfast the next day. So my Uncle Norbert went up to see what was wrong, and they found that he had had a heart attack. Well, every day for like 20 years, my uncle, who was this great nature lover, an artist, who had kept, like, he always kept animals in the garage, like chickens, and he would keep raccoons and pigeons in the garage in Chicago. And always go out and feed the birds every morning. He would always go out on the porch in the backyard and tear up a whole loaf of bread and scatter it out in the backyard to feed the birds. Every single morning. My Uncle Norbert went out to take out the garbage the day after my Uncle Joe had the heart attack. And as he came out from under the porch where my uncle would feed the birds every morning for 20 years, he was showered with all of this torn up bread, as if my uncle was still alive, feeding the birds. And he actually was able to collect some of this bread and kept it in a bag and had it for years after the fact. So it was amazing. It was one of the most amazing things I've ever seen in my entire career. It was one of the things that has convinced me, one of the most convincing things I've ever seen in my entire 35-year career, that we survive. We really, really do survive. That my uncle came out on that porch, even the morning after he died, to feed the birds. And that is my story, that after all of those years on Kyler Avenue, that family, my grandmother's family, who had such a long history of the paranormal, that history of the paranormal that influenced me to create my long career in the paranormal, continues on to this day, and I'm sure will continue on for many years to come. So thank you so much for listening to my story, and I hope you continue to listen to my stories. So thank you so much. Happy Halloween, RMT crew!
If you'd like to hear more about Chicago hauntings and haunted places, please visit Ursula Bielski's website, chicagohauntings.com, or find her on her blog, which is called The Chicago Ghost Tour. She has also written several books about Chicago haunted places. Her books include Graveyards of Chicago, Chicago Haunts, There's Something Under the Bed, Creepy Chicago, Haunted Bachelor's Grove, and many more books. You could pick up one of these books if you're interested in the Chicago area haunts. Check them out. And again, thank you so much, Ursula. On to our next story.
Hi, my name's Ben Longoria. I am a local author here in San Antonio. I've just completed writing a second volume of horror following American Monsters, my first volume of horror. This one's titled The Forest Around the Hill. It'll come out this around Halloween time, in October 24th, the Twins Bookshop here in San Antonio. Go pick up yourself a copy. I'll be there with the Rigor Mortis crew here to promote the event and do a reading and a signing as well, and have a little Q&A with the audience and with the moderator from the Carpenter's Apprentice. It's going to be a great time. I have some personal stories here from San Antonio. A lot of them took place on the far northwest side, headed out to Fernie. Now out there, it's kind of near, it's also near Murray Stage Road, and there's a ranch out there. Not far from the Dominion, there's a ranch out there, and I stayed out there when I was a kid in middle school, and for about 3 years I lived out there on this ranch, and it was about 400 acres of land. There was a lot of ghostly activity that happened out there, and one of the most tangible experiences I ever had there was during a summer. Me and my brother had just got Turok Rage Wars, so me and him were playing up in the den, playing this great Turok Rage Wars from like maybe 9 o'clock at night after dinner to like 3 in the morning. So me and my brother played this all the way to the morning time, late night. We fell asleep in the den, sleeping in front of the couch. Just grabbed some blankets and fell asleep on the floor. And in the middle then, like as I was about to fall asleep, where you hit that point where you're half awake, half asleep, I heard really loud banging, just banging in the kitchen that was, adjacent to the den we were in. So I heard something smashing in the kitchen, and it was the cabinets. It was the sound of the cabinets opening and closing really fast, rapidly. And I woke up. It snapped me up. It was so loud and so nearby that I woke up real quick and opened my eyes. It's pitch black. I'm there on the floor, and it's dead quiet now. The noise stopped, and I'm like, okay, this had to have happened in my dreams. This can't be real. And as I'm sitting there in the dark, like, yeah, it was just your dreams. With the onset of sleep, it just happened. You're just tricking yourself into hearing this noise. And so I'm about to go to bed, and I hear my brother next to me go, "Did you hear that?" And I sent chills down my spine, and I go, "Yeah." And we both just we scooted next to each other. I just covered ourselves in the blankets and just tried to get to sleep. But that same summer, and really not long after that event, I only had one other house on that ranch with me, and my childhood friends lived there. And so we hung out constantly. And one night, I was at my house with my brother again playing video games, and I went to the kitchen to go get a drink, and I saw cops out front in the parking lot where we parked our cars. And so I went out to the door. I watched them out, talking to my neighbor, my best friend's mother. And I went outside. My parents were asleep. It was about midnight. It was pretty late at night, so it was very strange. So I went outside to see if everything was okay. The ranch had a problem with drifters at times, and there was a lot of weird stuff that would happen out there. So there was like the real possibility that somebody came on the land or something. It had happened before, so I went out there and asked, like, is everything okay? And my friend's mother looked at me and she goes, "Go back inside," like in a crazy panicked way. Go back inside and lock your doors. And so I locked the door, and my brother's like, "What's going on?" I'm like, "I don't know. My buddy's mom's upset. I don't know what's going on. There's the cops out there." So we go up to the kitchen again to see, get a good view of what's going on. And we watch the cops get in the car and drive down one of the dirt roads that leads further onto the property, into the ranch. So it gets really far back there. Like I said, it's a lot of acreage. And so what they're driving basically into is just woods with a lot of dirt trails that the ranch's owner uses out there when he rides his quad and stuff like that, and does work out there. So the cops drove out there for hours, and then they came back later, and then we would see them go down another trail that would lead into another part of the woods far out there onto the property. And they did this all night. Me and my brother would just keep checking on to see what's going on, and every so often we'd see them driving around the property at night. So in the morning, we're dying to ask what happened. So we go next door to my buddy, and he tells us the story of what had happened in the middle of the night. And apparently his mom got a call on a private phone line that she was using because her mother was ill. So my friend's grandmother had been sick, and they had this phone at the time that was used just for this emergency because she was in and out of the hospital. And she got a call on this phone in the middle of the night from a man who started the conversation going, "Hello, I just want to talk to you." My friend did the voice work fantastically. Well, that's about the same he did. And he goes, "Hello, can you talk to me?" And she's like, "Who is this? Like, who's, messing?" She thought it was a family member, somebody messing around, like, who's doing this? And he goes, "I just want to talk." And so she hangs up, like, okay, this is dumb, somebody just prank calling. He calls again, and she answers. And the voice is like, "Why don't you talk to me? I just want to be your friend." And talking to her in this creepy, high-pitched voice. And she's like, "Listen, this is a private line, blah, 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 it's used for emergencies. You need to get off this phone, stop calling me." And she's about to hang up, and the voice on the phone goes, "Don't you hang up on me." And she freaks out, hangs up, and outside her door, which their house was kind of further back into the woods, like, once you left her yard, you were in, like, pretty dense woods already. So her back door was already leading into the, out to the woods. And from that back door, she heard someone move against the door and then run off. It's just like someone apparently was leaning against her back door that led to her bedroom, and they ran off, and she could hear them run off. So she freaked out enough to call the cops to have them patrol the place. And so they went around patrolling the whole night, and she brought the kids, like my friend and his brother, she brought them all into the living room to sleep in the living room because of that voice. And not long after that had happened, days after that had happened, we had stayed the night again at that house. And that night, when we had stayed there, that back door leading into the woods was open, and we found my friend's baby brother, who was about 3 at the time. We found him crying in bed, and that back door was wide open, and he wouldn't explain to us what had happened and why he was screaming and freaking out. I thought it was a scorpion or something like that, something logical, and I looked and there's nothing, and then I realized, oh my god, that back door's been open this whole time. So a lot of stuff happened in that weird room with her, with voices like that. They got called like that, and weird things just happened in that house, especially in that back room, and that was one of the more creepy things I've ever heard that happened there. So those are my stories of the ranch out there in Bernie. There's a lot of them. We saw severed heads in trees, weird ghost shapes. I had tapping on my windows at night. It's a very spooky place, and we actually went out there in high school. It was a good time. My friends swore up and down they heard voices when they were camping out there in the woods. So hopefully one day we get to go back out there and camp again, like old times. So yeah, that's my story. Happy Halloween, RMP crew.
San Antonio author Ben Longoria will be having a book signing for the release of his new book, The Force Around the Hill. This will be happening Thursday, October 24th from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. at the Twig Bookstore, which is located at 306 Pearl Parkway, Suite 106, San Antonio, Texas 78215. The Force Around the Hill is his second volume of horror stories. His first volume included books The Hound of Endtown, its sequel, Hello Defiant. He is also working on another book called The Hermit, and it should be out in about a year. Again, you can catch Ben Longoria at his book signing at the Twig for his new release, The Force Around the Hill. And his guest will be the Carpenter Apprentice and also y'all's truly, the RMP crew. Thank you so much, Ben, for that story.
Seriously though, I did have a bad day. So when I finally meet up where I'm supposed to be, they put me with this laziest. It complains all the time, man. We call him Rosie O'Donnell, man. He just complains all the time.
Jazzy, you look like you have a question. What's your question?
Is he straight? Because straight people are the worst. I hate straight people.
We love the gays. He just complains a lot, man. He's fat, man. He's soft.
You know how those straight people are with their complaining?
Always with their complaints. Because he looks... Oh, Son of a bitch. No, but because he's always complaining. That's all he does is complain. Man, anyway, man, today we're in a secluded spot, man. And he was, I'm serious, man, it's fucking
Did it get
hot.
spicy?
No, did it get juicy? It did for him. It got hot and juicy.
Hey, don't you like Rosie O'Donnell?
Hell yeah, you see her in a league of her own?
And you're comparing?
Wait.
No. I can say, well, Rosie, but one thing about her is, man, she turned a person off because she complained a lot. That's it. She complains and complains like this motherfucker. That's annoying. Whatever you do that's in your life, that's whatever, man. But she did look hot in the league of your own, man. Biggest girl on that.
Rob, you'll be like, can you just put on this pink shirt and hat for me?
Just try it on.
While you're working, that's it.
Anyway, he was complaining about everything, man. It was hot. Why don't they have fans there? We don't have the right tools. I mean, like every word out of his mouth, it was just the next thing. This is the same guy who choked on that fucking. Remember the taco story?
Yeah.
That's the same guy.
He must
man.
be fucking fat. How do you choke on a taco?
He needs to breathe through his nose when he.
Train or what? Like,
Swallow like a duck.
He eats with the snorkeling gear. With the respirator. Tubes way down. Intravenous. He's intravenous now. Anyway, man, okay. We're in this secluded place. I cannot really get into detail what I do and where I'm at.
it was secluded.
Yeah, but it was way out there, and we had to deal with some shit out there. So we were in this.
Literal?
Yeah. No, not really.
Oh.
Where we're at, they have a restroom out there.
That's not literal.
Well, yeah, they have a restroom out there, but like we weren't out there. We were dealing with the floors. So we're out there and we're dealing with the floors, man. And this guy's just bitching up a storm, man. It's just it should take us maybe 2 hours tops, man, and we're done, and everything will be good. And he's like, and he's bitching and bitching. Oh, it's hot, and I'm tired, and I don't know why, and I have to only get 3 hours of sleep. I'm like, I don't give a fuck, man. Really, I don't.
Who cares?
I dude, really, man. And I'm getting annoyed, but I'm not saying nothing. But I'm hungover too, man.
Yeah.
So it gets to you, man. Shit. So this motherfucker, after a while, he starts complaining. And right mid-sentence, like, I don't know why they. I gotta take a shit. He takes off, and he goes to the restroom.
So he's fat and white. Oh, he don't gotta be fat.
He's fat, man. That guy is.
Is he? Okay.
Yeah, he can't even bend over to get that for me. So he's in there, man, and like, he was already annoying. So he starts going off in the fucking restroom.
Oh, man.
Dude, what the fuck?
Complaining?
What the fuck, man? It's like, there's no toilet paper in here.
Now that's a valid complaint.
But I was.
I love these socks.
Yeah, but I was already pissed off because I was hungover. I was like, fuck this, I can't take it, dude. I can't take it. I walked out outside and I sat in the truck. I put it wasn't our podcast, it was some crime podcast.
Yeah.
I sat in there for like 20 minutes. I was like, fuck this motherfucker, man. and dude, when I came back in, he was like, Rob. And I was like, so I walked back out and I sat back in my truck. I was like, fuck this motherfucker. Rob. Man, I came back like another 10 minutes, man. I did stuff. And I was like, I'm going to finish the rest of this Ted Bundy story or whatever they were giving. So I come back and
He's still in the toilet.
Yeah, shorts on.
he's sitting down and he's real quiet. And I was like, he's like, where the fuck were you? And I was like 40 minutes, dude. I was like, what are you talking about? I'm like, everything's good, man. We're almost ready to go, man. He's like, dude, you didn't hear me calling you? I was like, no, I was in the truck getting some. Dude, I don't know how he did it. He used. What? He used the roll, not the roll.
The cardboard?
So the cardboard? It wasn't. He said he had to peel there.
Hey, that's pretty smart.
Innovative.
I was like, unless he wanted to use his socks, but I don't know if he thought about that or he just, like, you know how much I paid for these socks? 90 cents. So anyway, man, I didn't feel bad, dude. I didn't feel bad. That's how I kind of do, man. But
Take me home.
yeah, he kept moving in the chair. What's wrong?
so funny in the truck.
Why are you selling it so much?
Hi, I'm Eric. I'm with LA Paranormal Society.
I'm Sonia, and I'm also from LA Paranormal Society here in Canada.
We're a small investigative group working out of Lethbridge, Alberta, which is about an hour away from the Montana border.
The story that we're going to tell you tonight is a little town called Milk River. It's about an hour outside of Lethbridge, where we are. We were contacted by
The client. Being the case manager, I conduct the initial interview with the client. So she right away jumped on demonic, which we typically try and avoid if we can. I mean, the team that we're working on was all about demonic, and most of the stuff we dealt with had nothing to do.
And it usually never does.
And so as part of our policy, I guess, is we don't demon hype. Just because people are already scared, and there's no point in scaring them any worse than they're already scared, until we can maybe get some evidence or some sort of thing to verify that it could be.
So the lady was letting us know that her daughters or one daughter actually was seeing a man in her closet and was scaring her.
Telling her to do stuff. Their young autistic son had actually started setting fires inside the home. And she had some proof that she'd seen a counselor and everything like that. And I thought, well, is this baseline? Is this off a baseline? What's going on? And as it turns out, it was totally off base. And the little boy was hearing stuff as well.
So we decided to do a preliminary investigation. We decided to head out there. It was winter time, so we got there, and what we normally do is sit down an interview. I usually do a walk around the property just to see what I feel and what I think, and what's going on with the kids, and there were some people there that I never expected to be there. There was a lady there who
was their minister.
Yeah, she claimed to be a minister. I, for some reason, didn't feel that she was. But I didn't have any, other feelings about her. She asked me a lot of personal questions, what we were doing there, what we were planning on doing, what we were planning on investigating. It seemed really strange, but, we gave her some, little bit of information, not too much. I experienced some things that I saw on the highway outside of the property, seeing an accident happened during the 1970s, maybe early 80s. It was a younger man. The way he was dressed, I could tell the era of where he was from. The truck was completely totaled, and it seemed like he had died in the accident. And I felt like the man that was going into the little girl's closet where she was seeing was the same man that I was seeing outside while I was standing out on the driveway. And it just happened like pictures in a book, like a really quick snapshot in my head. It's really just crazy to experience. It's just really hard to explain. So what I did was go back inside, and they actually verified what I had told them. They had called a grandmother who had lived in the community for years, decades. She actually made phone calls to some other people in the small town and came to find out that actually there was an accident. It was a little bit further down the highway, but it did happen around the same time that I was seeing. It was an only child of these two farmers. He did die in the accident, and I felt that he was, a traveler. He was lost, and he was walking through the properties. It's a very small area, lots of prairie land, I just felt that he had no idea that he was dead. And so once that information was verified, the minister that was sitting at the table, is what she called herself, was shocked. I think she was completely floored by the information that we had just given out to the people we were investigating for.
So when we set up the investigation, there was a couple of interesting things that happened. We had the one camera that was focused on a crawl space specifically. Now, it's important to note that the air, the ceiling, everything was different in different places of the house. You go up in the kitchen, the living room, nothing was fine. It's totally fine. But you go up into the upstairs, it was kind of cold, it was chilly. We couldn't really figure out a reason for it. We tried to debunk it. We couldn't. When you got down into the basement, it was heavy, it was thick, it was depressing, quite frankly. The rest of the house was almost immaculate. You get down into the basement and it was just a mess.
We actually started using some of our equipment. We're using the Obelisk 5, which began to just spit out like random words, constant, like a slew of words.
We had 50 or 60 words easily.
Yeah, and at first, we're hard to decipher, well, like, why is it doing this, why is it acting this way? It never seemed to act that way before. We captured, some audio, some orbs, some really crazy, pictures.
We had a very audible laugh that we both had heard while we were doing an ABP session. We were asking just generic questions, and we caught it as a Class A. This was very, very creepy, and it was like literally right behind our ear. And the entire time we were down there, we got this feeling that somebody was hovering behind us in a very intimidating way.
Yeah, it was like a hulking kind of figure. It was causing me to feel nauseated. I felt pain. I felt like I had to get out of there. I felt like the mother actually had used the bedroom down there as a punishment for the kids, and I believe the kids were really scared to being stuck in that bedroom. The closet, however, was even worse. I felt like there might have been a portal there. It was just causing us to feel so very sick and so very drained and actually really scared. We ended up stalking and closing up investigation. And we thought, we've got enough. We'll go back. We'll go through it. We talked with them to make sure they were okay. I staged the basement. We ended up a few months later. I ended up getting an email or a message on Facebook from someone who was random. I don't know who they were, but they were talking about the investigation that we had done. And I don't know how they knew that we were there because we were very private. We don't share any of that information. They were asking us to come back and talking about things that had happened in the town or things that were being talked about. It just seemed really strange. So we contacted the people once again, and they were actually receptive to us coming back out there because they had, some bad feelings. The kids were actually kind of scared again, and so we felt like, geez, like it's ramping up again. Something's going on. And so we headed back out there a second time. Second time we went out there was even crazier. We got some really amazing evidence.
A couple of interesting photos where we definitely captured a black shadow that seemed to be moving around and avoiding.
It was a huge black mass.
And it moved. Like one after another, you could see that the shape was moving.
Yeah, and we tried to debunk the pictures as soon as we got them. We tried everything. We tried different lighting. We tried and everything. And we could not replicate those pictures. We captured actual still orbs right off of a digital camera. Not even, counting all the orbs and things that we captured on our video, on our CCTV cameras. But we discovered some writing, scribbled out writing symbols that were kind of illegible, that were written in the crawl space of where we captured the black mass. And so we were kind of wrapping up that night.
I got punched in the face twice.
Right. Eric was feeling like he'd been, touched or punched or...
Well, it was definitely punched. It was like when you turn around and accidentally run into a wall or something.
Yeah, and so we went back. We went back upstairs. We were wrapping up. We were just kind of talking, and I kept saying to the lady of the house, I feel like we're missing something. Are you sure that you're not telling us something? And she proceeded to let us know that the minister that was there the first time had went ahead and saged the house. Or done some sort of saging ritual, and she brought out the sage stick that this woman had used. The sage stick was wrapped in different colored threads. They didn't look like the same sage sticks that I used. It was very...
Or even seen, they were like black.
Yeah.
Red.
Yeah, and they were very, it was a homemade sage stick for sure. The writing that we found downstairs, we actually started to put together that we felt that this woman was maybe practicing witchcraft. She was involved in the occult, but she portrays herself as a minister in the town, and the town is very, very small. But she seemed very, very threatened now that we think about it, and now that we go back and we realize with the questions she was asking us in the beginning. We don't know what kind of rituals she might have done before we were there, but we really felt it. We felt that there was a presence there. It was ominous. It was oppressive. It was dark. It was black, hulking, and it was actually really scary. And we did end up getting quite a bit of evidence.
Some key ones, so we talked about the photographic evidence, we can't publish any. The client wanted complete privacy, so unfortunately we can't publish any of it, which is just the nature of some of this stuff. But we caught an orb materializing right out of a wall and floating away.
The animals that they had actually were acting very strange on camera. We captured them following orbs.
They had two cats that would sit at the crawl space, and they were actually tracking the orbs as they were flying around. It was really interesting to see.
Oh yeah, it was very cool to watch. But the feeling, and the funny part about it was I actually went upstairs before we wrapped up. And the first time we were there, it was very cold upstairs in the bedroom. Different feelings from the basement altogether.
Not oppressive, not almost it's weird because it was cold, but it was a warm feeling at the same time. It wasn't uninviting or anything.
Yeah, it was just very cold. I went into the bedroom, sat in the bedroom for a little while, went outside, and just from the outside where I was standing, I could see an old woman in the window. And I just immediately knew who she was, why she was there. So I had Eric go inside the house, and
I left Sonia outside so she couldn't hear what I was talking about with the client. I came in, I talked to the client, I asked a couple questions about elderly relatives that may have passed away. She did have a picture. I said, take the picture out, don't show us. Me, Sonia, and the client. We went upstairs and we recorded the interview.
I just went ahead and told her everything I thought, what I felt, how I was seeing the old woman standing at the window, how the feeling where she was standing was so icy cold in that part of the bedroom, that side of the bed, which the client then confirmed that absolutely was correct, and that's what she was feeling.
Showed us the picture, disclosed some information that we knew about but didn't disclose to her.
Yeah, I explained what she looked like, so once she showed the picture, then she was actually really shocked and kind of a little bit happy that she was able to connect with a grandmother figure.
Turned out to be her grandma.
Yeah, so it was kind of crazy because the house was separated into almost compartments of different spiritual energy. It was a very strange place. Now, this house was probably built, I think they said, in the 60s.
Yeah, it was the 60s or 70s. Was owned by only one other couple before them.
But it sits right on the corner of a highway that is, it's very, very busy. A lot of farm traffic, tractors, things like that are going
right near a hospital.
Yeah, right near a hospital. The hospital was right outside their bedroom window, right across the lane. So, I mean, we're very close to, what's the place?
Writing on Stone.
Writing on Stone. And if you look that up, Writing on Stone is a very spiritual place. There are a lot of, what do you call them?
I don't want to say cave drawings because that's not accurate, but they're Native American site where they had done a lot of their drawings and art history was, it's all on these walls.
Yeah, it's a very, very cool place. So, see something interesting anyways if you're ever wondering about where we are here in Canada. We have a lot of creepy places here and a lot of really historical sites here.
That was probably the creepiest investigation I've ever been on.
Yeah, it really freaks us out for sure.
And we actually had to stop for, I think, 5 months or so we could reorientate ourselves. We had done a stage session at the end of that investigation, but in the end, we have to state that it was beyond our ability, it was beyond our power. So we had to advise that they contact somebody, clergy, who could do a house blessing.
We just want to say happy Halloween to R&E Paranormal from
all your listeners from Lethbridge, Alberta, Canada.
Yeah, all the way from the Great White North.
We'd like to thank Sonia and Eric from the LAPS investigative team out of Lethbridge, Alberta, Canada. They do investigations there, so if you'd like to contact them, you can contact them on their Facebook page, which is LAPS Paranormal. They work with LAPS Paranormal Society, which is actually a network throughout the United States. They branch off into different cities, which is pretty awesome. Again, we'd like to give special thanks to Sonia and Eric for their story. Thank you so much. And now, on to our next story.
Hi, my name is Clinton. I have been involved in giving ghost tours in and around Gettysburg, Pennsylvania for many years. And my family grew up in this area, and I actually have family members that fought during battle here in Gettysburg. And if you've never been to Gettysburg, a lot of people don't realize how intense the fighting was here. Before I get into my story, I'd like to set the stage a little bit and help people that have never been here or they have only been here a few times to really understand what it was like here in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania in July of 1863. This was a small town in Pennsylvania of 2,800 residents in July of 1863. Most of them were women and children. All the men were off fighting in the war. Most of them were fighting for the Union Army. But on July 1st, both the Union and the Confederate armies, two of these massive armies, collided here in Gettysburg. And they estimated somewhere around 155 to 160,000 soldiers clashed in and around the town of Gettysburg. And over the course of those 3 days, all that fighting, about 10,000 men died here in the streets and out in the fields surrounding this town. And then another estimate is that 30,000 soldiers were seriously wounded and no hospitals here. So basically everything in this area became a hospital. And the reports coming out of these hospitals were really, really horrific. There was so much blood pooling up on the floors of these buildings as they were being used as surgical hospitals that they actually had to start drilling holes in the floor to let the blood drain down into the cellars. And there were so many amputations happening that they didn't have any place to put all these amputated limbs, so they would literally just start throwing them out the houses, just make piles right outside the window. So this is a place in July of 1863. It was really apocalyptic in a way. You know, to the people that lived here, it was like the end of the world. There were just dead men everywhere. It took nearly a year to bury all of the dead people that were left behind by the battle. Most of them did not get buried well, particularly those who were from the South, the Confederate soldiers. And so the story I'm going to tell you about now is sort of set the stage of what it's like here in Gettysburg, why I think Gettysburg is so haunted. I want to talk to you a little bit about this place that I go to, I take guests on my tour, called East Cemetery Hill. East Cemetery Hill is just south of the town of Gettysburg, and it's a high hilltop where there was a pre-existing cemetery there. It was called Evergreen Cemetery, even then in 1863. But during the battle, it became an artillery position for the Union forces on the south side of Gettysburg. And on the night of July the 2nd, there was a very intense artillery battle that took place between those Union artillerymen up there on Cemetery Hill and some Confederate artillery about a mile away at a place called Benner's Hill. There was this huge exchange. These artillery guns were just, pounding one another from a mile away. And it was during this artillery battle up on East Cemetery Hill, just outside the town of Gettysburg, that a gun crew that was working one of the cannons, firing one of the guns up there, was hit by a Confederate artillery shell, and they were blown up essentially. And when the explosion happened, some other men came to the area to see if they could lend any aid, if anyone had survived the explosion. And what they found was that, yes, one of the men from that gun crew was still alive, but just barely. And his name was Jimmy James H. McCleary. But when they found Jimmy, his right arm had been completely blown away. His legs were just hanging on by a thread, and the documented reports are that his torso was even had been opened up by the blast, and that he had severe internal damage and bleeding as well. And yet somehow Jimmy was still alive, and just conscious, even, which was terrifying to see. And so Jimmy had a cousin that was a bugler in the battery, and he was not actively engaged in the fighting during this artillery battle. And so he got another guy who was not actively firing the guns, and they got Jimmy on a litter, and they carried him away from the incoming fire and the firing of the guns on Cemetery Hill. And they took him back across the street to the Evergreen Cemetery, which was just adjacent to where the artillery guns were. And it's there Jimmy McCleary died. Now, as nighttime fell at the end of this artillery battle, the soldiers that were up there on Cemetery Hill were preparing for the next fight. You know, they would clean their guns and restock their ammunition and things like that. And one of the guys that was cleaning a gun, getting it prepped for the next fight, he's swabbing down the barrel of a gun, and he looked down at his feet at the base of this gun, and he sees an arm lying there. And he knows that, all these guys were, generally from the same part of the country, and they knew each other. They were fighting together for a long time. He knew it was Jimmy McCleary's arm. He knew that Jimmy had died that day during the fight. And it was this hot July, and he knew that, these battlefield burials were pretty awful. Even under the best of circumstances, these guys weren't going to get a decent burial. And he couldn't stand the idea of Jimmy's arm just kind of laying out in the hot July sun, exposed to the elements.
And so he did the only thing that he thought he could do for his friend in that moment. And he said a prayer, and he buried Jimmy's arm on Cemetery Hill. Now, Jimmy did get a fairly decent burial across the street at Evergreen Cemetery from where he was, injured and eventually was killed on East Cemetery Hill. And if you go up there at night to East Cemetery Hill, and I take tours up there pretty regularly, it's a beautiful place to see at night. You can really, it's a high hilltop, and then the night sky perfectly backlights the hilltop, and you can see all of the monuments for the battle, and you can even still see some old cannons that are there as part of the national park. And when people go up there at night, sometimes to take pictures, they will see a lone figure walking across the top of Cemetery Hill. This person that walks around up there that people see walks with this terrible limp, though. And their shoulders are a bit hunched over, as if someone who's in pain. And they'll see this figure limping up on the top of the hill. This shadowy figure sometimes will stop and sort of steady himself on a monument or one of the old guns that are still there, and then we'll move on, sometimes pass behind a monument or a tree, and then disappear. And the story goes, of course, that this is the ghost of Jimmy McCleary. He's up there looking for his lost arm. Now, back in June, I've told this story many, many times, and I've heard it, many times growing up in the area. Story of Jimmy McCleary on Cemetery Hill, and I would take groups up to the hilltop and at night and show them and tell them the story. In June, just as I got up there with a group of, I think there was about 5 of us, maybe 6, and we got up there, and right as I began telling the story, we looked up at the crest of Cemetery Hill, and there was that lone figure. And we were all a bit shocked, and we watched it slowly limp across the hilltop. The sighting lasted, I'd say, probably about 3 minutes, maybe 4. That's about as long as it was. We watched the figure limp across the top of Cemetery Hill, went behind a monument, and then went behind a tree, and then it vanished. We waited to see if anybody was up there. And sometimes you will see tourists walking around up there at night. It's not unusual, but if you watch long enough, they will, after a short time, they will come down from the hilltop, or if you watch them long enough, you see if someone walking around up there. It won't be long until they pull out a flashlight or a cell phone or something to light their way down the hill. But this person that we saw, that figure that we saw that night, the one that disappeared, we never saw them come down off Cemetery Hill. We never saw them with a flashlight or a cell phone. So I feel reasonably confident that I saw the ghost of Jimmy McCleary. After many years of telling the story, I finally saw him, his ghost up there on Cemetery Hill, looking for his arm. And that's my story. Happy Halloween, RMP crew!
Guys, it's been a great Halloween, and man, these have been some great stories. So cool, everybody, all these people that sent in their stories, or
thank y'all.
I don't even think it was just because we mentioned it was a Halloween episode. These guys were just ready to lay down their stories, and they were so gracious, man. I mean, every one of these ones were just so awesome, man. I mean,
Who was your favorite, Rob? I'm just kidding. I know you don't kiss and tell. I know you
Who
don't
was
kiss
your
and
least
tell.
favorite?
Rob doesn't kiss and tell everybody. We know. Don't worry about it.
no, I mean seriously, guys, you all heard the stories, man.
Oh, it was great.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they were. I mean, and every one of these people that gave us one, we want to give you all props. Thank y'all so much, and we can't wait to get more stories from y'all. And y'all were so gracious by giving us these stories. Thank y'all so much.
Hope you're having a great Halloween.
Thanks for the Halloween shout-outs.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That was way cool.
Yeah, they were only happy to do it, man. So God bless y'all and happy Halloween. Happy Halloween.
Yeah, that's right. Again, we're still always looking for stories, and if you guys got stories, man, what's that phone number, Rob?
That phone number is 210-901-8666. And remember, folks, that is a 3-minute call. So if y'all do go over, please just let us know this is part 2 or part 3 or however long y'all go, and we will edit that bad boy to get it on the show. And we can't wait to hear them, man. We use all of them. Every one of them that we've been sent, we use them.
We got 100%.
Yeah. I think we skipped one, maybe. I think, but I could be wrong.
It was a recipe. I think we got that recipe one.
Recipe again.
And I think they were in the wrong. You know what?
Oh, you know what? Yeah.
We didn't skip it though. I actually did use it.
Well, it was used, but not in the podcast. But
Was she drinking? Writing the recipe.
You know what though? It was good. The biscuits and gravy were
Did you make it?
I tried how they made me.
He making my mom recite it in bed.
Okay, what else did they say, Dad? You know?
it's like reading a bedtime story.
And then what?
And then
what happened?
He's like, almost, keep going.
We're almost there. Give me the last one. It's good, dude.
and 4 sticks of margarine.
Butter.
Country crock margarine. Oh,
That's why you
Put me right to sleep.
Yeah, you're gonna need 4 sticks of butter. I'm like, oh hell yeah. Yeah, this is gonna happen.
just buy a tub.
If you don't want to call that story in, you can email us at rigormortisparanormal@gmail.com, or you can visit us online. You can visit us online. You can visit us online at www.rigormortisparanormal.com, and there you can actually check out our video, Marianne O'Neill.
Oh yeah.
Which was just released, so you gotta check that out. Please check it out.
Absolutely. Share, support us, like, watch the whole thing.
It's not long.
Although it's amazing, you would want to watch the whole thing.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you know, Academy Award stuff, yeah.
Somebody better be fucking win an Oscar here.
But it's awesome. But yeah, definitely, please share us. You know, like we used to beg for money all the time, but honestly, a share is just as
Begging
good,
for
even
likes.
better.
Because if you share,
You care. Oh,
Sharing is caring.
Yes,
Check out the
it
merch. Yeah, check out the merch
Check the
online.
merch.
We got t-shirts and buttons. Hopefully more stuff soon. But
hopefully more mugs too, man. Those things are awesome, man.
the thing is, we can't ship the mugs though because they're heavy. They're really heavy glasses. But
that's right. No, you have to stop by and just pick one up.
You're in the UK. Make it out here.
Good luck.
Yeah. Somebody orders 4 mugs. It ain't happening.
yeah. Oh man. So we'd like to thank our special guest one more time, Halloween Mike.
Always fun.
And we hope you guys have a super Halloween night.
happy Halloween!